Welcome to Minority Report. I'm your host, Salomón Flamenco. On today's episode, we have Irueosa Osadayi Ohanmu, a fashion designer and student at Parsons School of Design in the New School. Really cool person. She's really great. What I like about this conversation is the way in which it's almost the encapsulation of what I like to do on this podcast, right? So she talks about how the combination of her upbringing, right, which is at once the child of Nigerian immigrants growing up in the US, and how that leads to something new in the creation of her work and what she's trying to do with her work, right? Utilizing these maximalist patterns in her design that also focuses on size inclusivity, right? Designing for contemporary people. I think there's something so beautiful about that. I think that's really what I love to do on this show, is to highlight and profile the people at the forefront of the new chic. I think it's really cool. And yeah, you guys aren't going to find this out until the end of the conversation, but she just got back from Los Angeles, which had the same bad weather as the rest of the country for the last week or so. But while there, she was at the NAACP Image Awards, where she designed some work for Ruth Carter to wear. For those of you who don't know Ruth Carter is a legendary costume designer, having worked on both Black Panther movies, most recently Wakanda Forever, and a number of Spike Lee films, Malcolm X, Do the Right Thing, Bamboozled. I know I'm forgetting a lot of them. Just a legendary costume designer, so just a brilliant opportunity for an amazing person. I really love this conversation, and I hope you all enjoy it. Hi, thank you for joining me.
Hi.
Just to start out, who are you and what do you do?
So my name is Irueosa Osadayi Ohanmu. Some people know me by Irueosa, some people know me by Osadayi. And I'm a fashion designer currently at Parsons. And I focus on size inclusive luxury wear.
How was Fashion Week? I know that just ended, right?
Yeah, it just ended. Now we're doing, it's not New York Fashion Week anymore, but Fashion Week elsewhere is still going on. It was good. This fashion week I relaxed. I didn't do much. I attended like after events and things like that. But it was nice to just relax this time. Last semester I was so busy with fashion week and I like attended, I think it was either 2 or 3 fashion weeks and helped backstage. So it was interesting to see people in person and realize like, oh, they're real people. Like they're not just celebrities.
Yeah, this work
Yeah,
is like behind everything.
exactly.
It's really cool. I'm wondering, like, what led you into the fashion space? Like, what first made you interested in going into that world?
Yeah, so what led me to that was always growing up plus size, and never finding the fashion that I relate to in the store. It was like, the 2000s, very much into that skinny jeans era. It was a big deal then. The Jonas Brothers and all those all those people, Hannah Montana, that era of like having fashion that is very like they would use word chic and skinny and just never finding something that I can relate to in the store, or just kind of browsing around with the affordability that my family could afford, the clothing my family could afford. It was never like something that I relate to. It would always be something drab, or I'd have to go into the men's section to find my jeans, which I still do most of the time. And yeah, that led me to always be creating things, always making garments for myself. And yeah, so I've always been doing that, but now it's like what I do full time and study to do it and meet interesting people that are passionate about it as well. But my family, originally, I was in the field of science. And ever since, as a little child, like science was always a thing. It was like, my daughter's going to be a doctor and my daughter, the doctor. And it was like, I believed it. I was passionate about it. When I entered college, I realized that I just can't do the MCAT. Like it's just not for me.
Yeah.
Studying, like, I mean, good for those people that do it, like they're passionate about it. Yeah, so I entered college and I really still wanted to be in the medical field. I graduated University of Massachusetts Amherst with a degree in biology and a minor in Afro American studies. And my focus was molecular biology, and I was really interested in cardiovascular disease. So then that led me to a bunch of other programs, which led me to entering a PhD program, which focuses on molecular biology and biomedical sciences. And through there, I was able to really like plan out my life and realize like I don't want to actually specialize in this for another 6 years or 5 years and then have to work for somebody or become a professor. Those are not the only options, but those are the main options that people tend to go towards. And I was just like, I can't see myself doing this. And the plan was always to kind of use that money to have like my side business as fashion. And then I realized like, why am I wasting time doing something I don't really love or relate to as much as I do fashion? So yeah, I guess does that answer the question of how I got into it?
Yeah, it does. It does. I'm thinking about a lot of different things right now, especially just your parents are immigrants, right? I feel like as
Yeah,
the kids of immigrants, you are told like go in this field and then you
exactly.
succeed because of the standards we put on you, you know?
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
very high standards of like you have to be successful because we didn't come here for nothing. Like
yeah.
you came here to be successful, you have to carry on that legacy. And being like the first child in my family, it's like a lot of pressure. But I just kind of go along with the flow of what God is calling me to do, and it just happens to flow that way into fashion. So now I'm here.
Can I ask, how did they react when you told them about this pivot?
Yeah, I basically had a mental breakdown. I told my mom, like, Mom, I'm not happy. Like, I just can't focus anymore in science. Like, I was so depressed in college, and like, I don't want to be down that road for 6 years. And she was like struggling with it at first because she was like, I mean, you're in a PhD program. Like, what's gonna happen? Like you made it to the top of like the science. Like, why are you quitting now? And I'm like, well, I'm not happy. I don't know what to do here. And fashion has always been like what I do. Like I come home, I make clothes. Like that's all I do in the summer. And even during COVID, I just made a bunch of clothes. And she took it as like, okay, if this is really what like you're called to do, like reflect on it, pray about it, and like hopefully you're led in the right direction. And that's what I did. And I got into Parsons, which is like the number one fashion school in America. And I was like, oh my gosh, oh, this is the side. Like, I just gotta go. I just gotta, let go of all my fears of not making it or failing or letting people down and just like go with, what is right in front of me. And she took that as a sign of like, okay, yeah, so she's supposed to be here.
Yeah.
But I also, told my other relatives, I'm not sure they really know I'm in fashion because the last they heard of me is like I'm in a PhD program and they're like, okay, she's set. We don't have to worry about her anymore. But yeah, I think they're now realizing, children of immigrants, like they don't always have to stay in science to be successful. Like they see other children of immigrants succeeding in fields like, sports and entertainment. I mean, as a Nigerian, there's so many Nigerians that are succeeding in that field. And that's something that I see, like my relatives and my mom, they're slowly changing their minds. They're like, okay, like just get your first degree and then, you can branch out into other things. And I'm like, yeah, the first degree is for you. And the second part of my life is for me. Yeah. So I find that that's a lot of what's happening right now. And yeah, I mean, she's still, sometimes iffy about it, especially when I tell her, like, oh, the tuition's coming up, mom. She's like, see, this is why you should stay in science. I worry about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I caught her sometimes like telling people that, I'm still in the PhD program, but I'm on a year leave and I'm coming back. And I'm like, Mom, I'm not going back. Right. She's like, well, you got to test it out. You have to have all your options open. I'm like, I tried it. Didn't work for me, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I still have, if I want to go back into science, I could still do that. But I just don't see myself doing that per se.
I'm
Um,
wondering, like, the question is, how has your background influenced and informed your work in fashion design? But I'm interested also in how would you come at it from these different angles? Like, I think there's a lot in play, and I'm wondering, like, I don't know. My gut is like wondering, how do you combine all of them?
it's a lot to combine. I feel like what's important right now is creating fashion that makes a statement, not only physically, but like I want to say politically, but like not too politically charged. I find that like fashion is a way to make a statement about yourself. When you wear brands, it means something. When you wear Balenciaga right now, people judge you. You know what I'm saying? People judge you. Unfortunately, it has to do with a lot of politically charged things. And I feel like it's especially important for Black designers to show their different sides of themselves and what do I say? Like explore the culture in a way that is true to themselves and can relate to other people so that it's exposure in a way that is authentic, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Because I find that and back in the day, a lot of brands are like culturally appropriated. Like you have YSL with like their African collection, which is like, he's not an African person, but like, yeah. And there are a lot of like Black designers coming up that I'm like, great, good for you. Like you're doing it. So in that sense, like what influences me in my fashion is my culture and being Nigerian American and having like that dichotomy and harmony in and of itself, like my upbringing and how I can relate it and explain it to other people that is like, wow, this culture is beautiful. I'd love to explore more of it and I'd love to, support people of this culture or support other people in various cultures. And yeah, my work mainly focuses on like the stories of specifically the Edo people of Nigeria, Benin City, as I'm an Edo Nigerian. And yeah, that's what my senior collection is going to be on. And I hope I can imbue that in the future in a lot of my collections. But that's a main thing that focuses my fashion. And then obviously, the Black diaspora and things that are happening in America, in general, the Black experience of the African Americans in America. Yeah. So, and then what else? And then in terms of science, I find that because I study like molecular biology, I just love looking at like cells under the microscope and things like that and applying it to specific like techniques, embroidery techniques, showing micro details. I'm very like detail oriented in that aspect. But another way that science could be, well, definitely is going to be applied to fashion in the future is like waste. And I find that that's what the main difference between generations before and like generations now. They care about how the fashion is being recycled. Where is it going? It's not ending up in a landfill in Ghana, which again, another politically charged thing. I just read an article in a Business of Fashion that was like, they're calling it colonial waste because it's like, this whole landfill, millions of garments each year are being dumped in Ghana and it's toxic, it's not productive to their community. It's kind of like it's colonialism in a sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, caring about those things and using science to combat that waste and maybe degrading the clothes quicker and things like that, or finding more sustainable ways to dye fabrics are things that are up and coming for the next generation, but also something that influences a lot of fashion now and should influence many designers now.
Talking about business of fashion, though, I read a headline a couple days ago, and it was
Hmm.
talking about how, I'm forgetting the exact phrasing, but it basically said at New York Fashion Week, Black creators have to be both entrepreneurs and creators and activists, right? And it's talking about how they have to carry more of the load than is reasonable because of their identity. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a lot with that's like with most creative fields. It's like because you're the face of something that's so public, like you have to kind of be put to a higher standard to represent, and you're kind of looked at if you're not. Like something as, serious as the George Floyd, situation is kind of judged upon like, okay, are they going to say something? Are they a Black person? Are they going to, support? What are they doing? And I mean, I feel like it's not like it's not necessary, but it's a lot of pressure to have to do that every single time, and it also kind of takes away from, I don't want to say takes away from the work, but like then you're judged as like a a Black designer rather than just a designer who makes clothes that are substantial and mean something and can have a legacy. It's kind of like how, Virgil Abloh, once he died, was judged as the hip hop fashion designer. Just really crazy to a lot of people. They're like, he did substantially more than just made hip hop clothes. Like, come on. He's like the first like African American to helm a French luxury house. And that's something substantial. That's really important. And a lot of
Louis
people look
Vuitton.
up to that.
Sorry to interrupt, but it was Louis Vuitton that he was the.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, Louis Vuitton. So it's like, whoa, for them to just kind of downplay it as a hip hop designer. And that was kind of around that same time, the George Floyd shooting. So it kind of takes away from like, I don't want to say takes away from your work, but in a sense it kind of does. Like it kind of makes it seem like, okay, this person, like, because they're Black, like they're gonna focus on, they automatically put you in the box. They're gonna have to be politically charged. They're already politically charged just because of who they are.
Mhm.
And it's a lot of pressure and a lot of like things that you have to worry about, and not just like how you say something or how you present your work, but also how people view you. And yeah, so it's instead of just, willy-nilly putting out an ad like, H&M would do with the coolest monkey in the jungle, or yeah, you have
Yeah.
to think about these things, and you have to think about the clothes, think about who's buying it, think about how you're presenting those clothes, and yeah, be like a political face in fashion, which is inherently like very white male dominated. So
Yeah. I feel like
yeah.
you've covered a lot of what I was going to ask next in terms of that previous answer, but like you said, right, especially in recent years, rightfully so, there has been a greater emphasis on uplifting Black creators and entrepreneurs. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering, as a young up and coming creator, like how has it been navigating that space in the fashion world?
It's been interesting. I feel like it's like an equity thing that a lot of people do not think about. Like normally designers of color do not come from a lot of money. So it starts from the foundation. I feel like fashion schools, should have a standard that is obviously set for everyone, but when it comes to equity, have a set of like an aid that will help Black designers come out. When it comes to financial aid, I know a lot of students, a lot of Black students at Parsons who have dropped out because of financial aid. And that's a loss because, they're very talented. And if you truly want to support Black designers, Black young designers, it starts from the foundation. It starts from helping young Black designers get into the field and, be able to stay with their talent, not having to worry about, um, I mean, there's so many things that we have to worry about in and of itself in terms of work culture and all these things and the fashion industry, which is so different. I'm learning that with all my internships that, there's so many different work cultures that you have to think about, and uh, rather than just not only your work, but also that. But yeah, so there's the fashion schools who I feel should help young Black designers. Coming in was very tough for me. I'd had to take out many loans, and I'm definitely going to be in a lot of debt when I graduate. But, and then after graduating, it's kind of hard to find a job in general, and make it as a Black designer is also very hard. But I find that a lot of the positive thing I found is that a lot of these competitions, recently I've been looking at like the LVMH prize, which has been incorporating a lot of Black designers and telling their true story, which I applaud them for doing. Like, it's an amazing thing to get an LVMH prize as a young Black designer and, be considered luxury without having to go through the avenues of, working for somebody that maybe doesn't relate to your culture. Maybe you have to like water things down a little bit, and having to go to the avenue before becoming a Black designer and having to struggle through the hierarchies and things like that. And again, with work culture, it's so different. It's either like, and I find that a lot of designers hire people that are like them. So it's like you're, a Black plus size woman. Like, how are you gonna relate to a white gay male? Like, it's kind of, hard to navigate that, but it's really just luck and chance. And I'm going on a rant here again.
Yeah, no, I think this is still great though. Again, a little detour. I don't know if you could answer this just in terms of our timing, but
Okay.
what is the, how do I phrase this, I guess? I'm just curious about like starting your own brand, right? Like being an upstart almost. Like what is, I feel like it's similar to a lot of other industries where it's like you either go in-house or you venture on your own. Is that something you've considered or that you and your colleagues have talked about? Like what?
Yeah, I feel that in this economy, it's hard to just start a brand on your own unless you have a lot of money and you're willing to, especially in New York, because it's just rent is so expensive and everything. It's like, do I buy more fabric or do I pay for my rent? Like, it's tough. But yeah, it's really by chance that I find that a lot of Black designers I've been researching have another job, and then they make collections on their own and apply to these competitions where they can get money and hire some people that will help them financially and marketing and production, all those things, before they start their own brands, and also build notoriety and build a name for themselves before they can apply. And all that stuff takes time and takes money. So yeah, I definitely want to in the future have my own brand. It's just a matter of money and time and finding the right team that would help me out and believes in my vision and is willing to, go through the trenches and the ups and downs of navigating the fashion world. And a lot of my colleagues think about that as well, but it's a matter of finding the right people. And also, after graduating, it's hard to find a job. So it's like the avenues are like either find a job,
Mhm.
go back to school and get your master's, or start your own brand, which a lot of people are scared about starting their own brand as well because of, not wanting to fail and, yeah, mishandling money and things like that.
Oh, I feel like it's almost the the universal startup problem, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
It's essentially starting a business, so it's like you have to allocate that money well. A lot of designers are not business oriented in a sense. It's like, I want to make this fabulous garment, but it's going to cost this much money, and I have to market it, and this costs this much, and I have to pay an influencer to wear it and it costs this much, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you buy garments and then you need to pay rent. Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, on that part too, pay rent. Yeah. Let's not
The
forget about that
emphasis
part.
on the rent. I want to double back a little bit because we talked about
Yeah.
this at the beginning, and how do I rephrase it almost? I'm just interested in your work, right? And not so,
Yeah. Of course.
it's obviously important to focus on size inclusive fashion, but I'm wondering also, how can you best integrate that with these fashion houses that maybe have not been so size inclusive in the past, you know?
Yeah, I believe that when it comes to size inclusivity, it starts with, again, the foundation. A lot of dress forms in my school and in most schools are a size 6. And those size 6s aren't even a size 6 in this day and age. They're actually a size 4. And yeah, bodies are not the same as they were in the 50s and the 40s. Like, bodies now look so different, and the dress forms are still the same. So
I'm sorry to
it
interrupt. So they're basing these models off of models from like the 60s and 50s with different sizes entirely?
basically, with different bodies and different, yeah,
Okay.
composure, it's again the foundation, being able to drape on a plus size form. Even not it doesn't even have to be a plus size form, maybe a size 2 with a stomach, or a size 8 or a size 10 with, like a chest. It doesn't correlate to the garments that are being worn by models. And a lot of the models on the runway right now, they're trained to look a specific way that not the general public, not everybody that buys these garments can wear it and look like the model, because the model is not, let's say it's not, is I want to say it's not a real person, but their whole job is to look like as close as they can to the dress form, but be really tall. So it starts with the foundation and having a figure to work on that is more relatable to the body and to the anatomy of a realistic size and realistic, shapes. People that have the same measurements and the same weight, all their, muscle and fat looks different on different bodies. And that's, all with genetics. So it's very much, they would have to have people that know how to drape on bodies that not only look like a size 6'4" in the dress forms in school. They would have to have experience draping on different sizes, that different shapes, know what silhouettes work and how to cut the fabric to make it, drape and look a certain way.
Mm.
And that's not being taught in school. Every time I bring up my, dress form that's a big girl, everyone looks like, "What are you doing?" You're like, "Wow, good for you." But it's like, I just want to make clothes that
Yeah.
actually look good on people,
Mhm.
real people. Not to say that models aren't real people, or people that are a size 2 aren't real people, but the general public, the stats in America is something like 64% of women are over a size 14.
Mhm.
So it's like, if we are not catering to these people, and these are everyday people that have, jobs in science, jobs as lawyers, like they may be able to afford these clothes, but we're not offering them that ability to look good and to afford these clothes that aren't cheap, um, that are high luxury.
Yeah.
So I just really want to focus on that aspect when it comes to designing. And I love to drape on different sizes. And so that's why I'm size inclusive. I really take into account different bodies and how they are structured. Is pretty much like architecture, kind of working on the foundation and building off of that. And it's kind of like reteaching yourself these things and applying what is being taught in school on a size 4, size 6, and translating it to a size 12 or size 24. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking about what you said about almost the economics of it, right? Where it's like, not discount, like models are real people, but the
Yeah.
average person probably looks more in terms of your vision than someone walking a runway. Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you can tell I don't know a lot about the fashion space, so I'm like learning a lot as we're talking right now. Like,
It's a lot that, people don't really think about. They're just like, I want to make beautiful clothes, and like it must be so glamorous to make beautiful clothes. But thinking about, me like making working in places where I can't find my size, or
mhm,
working for people where it's like they don't consider bigger clothes. Or I feel like some people now are considering it, but again, they don't work off of a form that is bigger. They just kind of like make it as a custom and say, look, we offer bigger sizes. But usually those garments that they make are not very flattering to bigger sizes. So it's very interesting to see. I don't know if it was just a trend or whatnot, that a lot of luxury brands have maybe one or two plus size models and say, okay, like we're trying to be inclusive. But they're usually like the garments that are not like cute to wear, to be honest. Yeah.
mhm.
But now I don't know if it's going the reverse way, because I recently read a business of fashion article that said, plus size models were not very much featured in this season of Fashion Week. And I was kind of disappointed. I was like, we gotta bring them back. I don't know what happened. Yeah, I'm going to rant again. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna cut out every time you say a rant. It's not a rant, it's amusing. This is very interesting, right? I'm thinking about the ways in which the culture is changing, but also so stagnant, which kind of leads into my next question almost. But I mean, how do you see the relationship between Gen Zers and fashion? Like, is it any different from the way past generations have participated in the space, or what have you seen just in terms of your work and research?
Gen Zers are definitely more open in terms of what fashion is and what they consider fashion. They very much like things to be imperfect, raw, and like distracted. But some people do like the very posh and put together look as well. I find that something that's very in common with something that's very standard with most Gen Z is that they care about the environment and they want their garments to be sustainable. They ask where things are from, they ask how was it made, and it's something that is a legacy that they want to carry forward that maybe the past generations did not care about, because there were so many technological advancements back then. It was just like, oh, we can make so many garments in such little time. Like we don't care about where it goes after. But yeah, that's something that's different with the Gen Z. They really care about these things. And that's definitely going to affect fashion in the future. Now we have like metaverse garments, which are like clothes that are created virtually and that your like avatar could wear, kind of, and you can trade them and things like that. I'm not too well versed in the metaverse, but that's a general gist that I understand. And the great thing about that actually is that with technology like Clo 3D, you can virtually create a garment, and that saves again on fabric waste, and then pattern make it there and then print it out and edit it in person, which saves a lot of time making samples, a lot of, again, fabric waste, and is more well-rounded in sustainability. A lot of Gen Zs care about craftsmanship, I feel like, in terms of exploring different cultures. So they're very open-minded in that sense. Like if a garment comes from let's say India or Africa, like they don't think twice about it in terms of like, oh, it doesn't carry that value, that like luxury value that a lot of back in the day, a lot of houses really care about that. I feel like some people care about it, but in a sense, with the way that things are changing and with the way that a lot of brands now focus on the craftsmanship back home and incorporate that into their garments. If it says, crafted in India or crafted in Ghana and things like that, it's not as damaging to the image as it was back in the day.
Mhm.
And yeah, finding new ways to innovate like the process is something that Gen Zs care about. So that's why brands like Reformation, which claims to be like very sustainable, and other clothes are like super sustainable. People love that brand, and a lot of Gen Zers care about those sort of things.
I guess, can I get on a little tangent again? I'm wondering what are your thoughts on, I'm gonna probably cut this part out, to be fair, but like just branding and art. Like how do you reckon with what you want to create because you're passionate about it and you have this vision you want to see through versus the needs of the market almost, right? That require a brand in order to sell, in order to profit, in order to make more of the stuff you're passionate about.
Yeah, that's always the struggle. If it was up to artists who would make things that people can't wear, but that's a difference between art and fashion. You have to consider that people are wearing this. Where are they wearing it to? How often are they wearing it? In order to create something that's both beautiful and unique, but wearable arts. And that's, again, goes into the general public of, now you have to think about your customers when you create a collection. And that's the difference between like haute couture, which is like very high fashion, not many people can afford it and people don't wear it every day, versus like just contemporary luxury, which is not as expensive, and generally people like can invest in a few pieces and wear it for a long time. So that's always like a struggle balancing those two when it comes to being a designer, because again, you're running a business and that business has to last. It has to continually provide for itself. And then you're also an artist. You have to make something that's unique, but not too unique or else it won't sell. Something that is relatable to many people, or your set of customers that you have, but can also expand to more people, which again creates that expansion in a brand. So there's always like so many things to balance when it comes to being like a fashion designer, an entrepreneur. Yeah.
I mean, how yeah, that this is a theme that's been coming up a lot in this conversation. And I'm wondering how there's so much to balance, right? Between the political and trying to depoliticize and also art and commerce. And you
Yeah.
said something really cool earlier. You said something really cool that I haven't noticed other people say on this podcast, where you talked about your upbringing as having both dichotomy and harmony. And I really love that.
Yeah, something I say a lot. I feel like being Nigerian, growing up as a Nigerian is like, kind of, I don't want to say opposite to like African or African American culture or white culture, but it's slightly different in, the mannerisms and things we've been taught. And and then being, raised in like this like 2000s era, and being like African American is like a different harmony in a sense that I still get to discover. And I look through my family photo albums and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is so, Nigerian, but then also like I see this African American aspect that's very interesting. And yeah, just relating that to the dichotomy and harmony in and of itself. Having like a sort of polished look, but that is still like raw and relatable. And that's kind of how I describe being Nigerian American. Yeah. And that definitely flows into my designs. Yeah.
That's
It's very
cool.
interesting to explore.
I see like a vision of the the work, right? The art. And
Yeah.
it's something that, yeah, the rawness and the, yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. I guess I'm also wondering, right? And please help me if I phrase this in a weird way because I'm still trying to figure it out. But even with my knowledge of fashion, right? And I feel like the popular perception of it is always kind of siloed off. It's like that moment in, what's that movie? The Devil Wears Prada, right? Where the other character is like, what's so important about fashion? And then Meryl Streep, I think,
Yeah.
like
Right.
breaks it down into like all these different layers. Like how can
Yeah.
the like how can the general public look at fashion in a way that takes it outside of the silo it's typically put in?
So are you saying like the silo that it's typically put in is like just not serious, doesn't matter?
I mean, maybe not doesn't matter, but it's maybe something people don't just they don't think about, right? Like on the day to day. Like they don't think about what they're going to put on. I feel like you kind of did cover this a little bit with the Gen Z topic, right? Like they're more
Mhm.
conscious of where things come from and where it's going to happen when it's done and maybe repurposing old pieces. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's still like an interesting thing to me about like, is it just an image consciousness thing or is it really like caring about what they put on and realizing the story behind it from conception through manufacturing to my shirt right now, you know?
I feel like even if it is an image conscious thing, it still serves the purpose of what it's supposed to do. So
Yeah,
even if you are pretending to care, guess what? You're still buying that garment that was sustainably made. Like
yeah.
at the end of the day, another thing I do think about is like people like my sisters who can't afford, a $200 t-shirt because it was sustainably made, and they buy things off of Shein, and their friends buy things off of Shein, but everybody knows that Shein is not so great for sustainability. They make thousands, hundreds of thousands of garments. I don't even know, every year, every month maybe. And that all ends up as landfill because it's not luxury fabrics, and they don't last very long. So wait, what was the question again?
How that's a big question though. How do you get like people to think about it more, right? Just how to be more conscious of those things. But I guess it's also a question of making those things more equitable. Because like you said, like sometimes if something's sustainably made, not everyone can afford that. You know, I feel like, yeah, this is a complex one I threw
It's
at
a
you.
complex one. I feel like it's hard to like fairly pay people and then not make a garment like it doesn't, like it adds into the cost. There's so many things that have played into, cheap garments, whether it's cheap fabric, paying below minimum wage in third world countries, and using, child labor, whether it's dyeing fabrics and having that toxic waste into the environment. So many different things that, you know, we can work on in terms of trying to create a sustainable fashion as a whole. It's so hard to tackle everything because, again, as you said, if you incorporate most of these things that I'm mentioning, your garment will be ridiculously expensive.
Mhm.
And then we have the problem of normal people, everyday people cannot afford these garments that are essentials, and they probably will last long, but they will be an investment piece that you will have to save up money for. It's really a toss up. Yeah, but I think slowly we can get there, and maybe if more people incorporate this into their practice, it will not be as rare or niche to have a garment that is, let me not say too super expensive, like maybe the use will bring down the costs of the garment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Almost like how everything when it comes out is super expensive and then
Right.
it's adopted more and people know how to make it, it becomes less expensive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a long road ahead, but also we don't have that much time until the effects of global warming are permanent. But
And I'm
yeah.
not laughing at what you said. I'm just like, yeah, that's real.
Yeah.
You know, it's we like to work on a deadline, let's say.
Oh my gosh. Procrastination. Yeah.
God.
That's
I'm,
that's why I feel like the Gen Zs, really care about that. Like they want their children. They want to have children.
mhm.
And they want, their children to live in a world that is not a post-apocalyptic version of what they lived in. Yeah.
Like Mad Max, just like cars in a desert.
Oh my gosh. Exactly. We have to change our ways in a lot of things, but especially fashion, because it's something everyone wears. Thinking about it or not, you're contributing to a system, whether it's sustainable or not, by the clothes that you wear.
Mhm.
And yeah, I feel like that's, again, to answer your question, like in terms of thinking of fashion in a way that is not publicized, like as in Devil Wears Prada and things like that. which Devil Wears Prada didn't really talk about the sustainable aspect of fashion. A lot of people glamorize fashion and, all these garments are so beautiful and gorgeous, but the non-glorious side is, oh, like we just wasted yards of fabric because we needed to make a sample. And also this person's gonna wear the garment maybe 2 times and then it's not it's not great anymore.
Mm.
But yeah, all these things are now being carefully thought of, even in the highest of companies. LVMH really tries to incorporate this into their houses. So it's something that will change, sure, slowly but surely.
Yeah. Pivoting back to your work specifically, because I really do want to focus on it.
Hmm.
How how would you want people to view your work? Right? What would you want people to take out of it and receive it when it's put out there?
I would love people to receive it as an exploration of my culture and a telling of story. My thesis collection is going to be about like motherhood and childlike wonder. I really love using like my collections to sort of relate like being Nigerian to being American and exploring like the beautiful aspects of it. But then we can also explore, the not so great aspects of it. But I really want people to receive it as something that is precious. Like when they wear it, they're making a statement and they're connecting to like the culture in a sense. But they don't necessarily have to be from the culture to wear it. It could just be like you're wearing something that means something, like you're supporting others,
Yeah.
but not in a way that's cultural appropriation, because a lot of people, when they feel like when they wear clothes that are African, things like that, it's culturally appropriating. And that's why I try to have my garments have an indirect, what's the word, like indirect relation, but also um has that meaning. And when I say like my culture, so my thesis collection is going to be about childlike wonder and motherhood. It's really exploring how childlike wonder kind of loses over time. And the one time I feel like as adults when we gain it back is when we have kids and we're able to explore, kind of reintroduce the world as kids and like see what they're thinking. And it's very interesting how people are like, I don't want to say obsessed with kids, but like in the sense of like how they think, it's just so like what they're thinking, but actually you don't know what they're thinking at the same time.
Yeah.
And having that like childlike wonder is something that I feel like is important to have as people, and exploring, different aspects of yourself and different aspects of culture, that with an open mind, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. I think what's cool about your work and this industry that is new to me, right? Like it's I'm learning a lot about it for this call and other calls. Like business of fashion is so good. Just like I feel like it's so informative.
It's so informative, yeah.
But it's cool that you're combining these elements to create something new. Like I never liked the term third culture kids. I don't know why it bothers me, but it is
Mm,
cool that you're taking these Nigerian roots and these like American roots and creating something in that, right? That is new and
yeah.
different. Yeah, that's really cool. I have one last question, and I think it's cool because you brought it up at the beginning too. But you're talking about, right, these preconceived notions of what elegance is, right? Where it's tied to
Mhm.
skinniness or whiteness and these different ideals. What does chic mean to you? What does elegant mean to you?
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely something that we have to decolonize, because it's still taught in fashion how, it's based on the past. It's based on, these legacy houses in the past that have this history of claiming what the word chic is and having it based in European culture and whiteness, and not telling the history of African fashion, which again is another thing that I love to incorporate into my work. The African silhouettes, the African fashion, the coral beads, which was used in Edo culture and beautifully seen in, many weddings, Nigerian weddings, which, 3-day whole event. But yeah, incorporating chicness into it in different cultures, what that means, not just having a one-way view of it, is super important. To me, it's very dynamic. Um, but I also have to retrain myself to think about what chic is, because again, when we go through historical references in fashion, we look at, the basic luxury European houses that define what chic is. And it's very hard because that's all that's been taught. There isn't like a fashion book of Africa. Like that's not a thing. Maybe it's a thing that is coming to light, but it's not a thing that is well known right now. We have Asian fashion. That's a thing. Japanese fashion, Chinese fashion, which again, they have their own definition of chic. But yeah, it's such a word that is meaningful but meaningless at the same time, because it's like chic. It's like all based on what you think it is. It's like a made up word. But yeah, because people can say, oh, chic means clean. It means you're, this French delicate, like, what's the word? Like dainty person. But could chic also mean strong? Could chic also mean, independent? Could chic also mean raw? It just feels so clashing.
Yeah.
But in a different culture, that can mean chic. So it's so like it's such a dynamic word, and elegant too. Yeah, it's again a meaningless word, but no, a meaningful word, but also a meaningless word, because it could mean so many different things that is not based on European standards, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Makes a lot of
So
sense.
once we introduce that non-European standard, it could mean so many things.
Yeah. It reminds me of what I had read about you before you came on, about how you like to incorporate a lot of maximalism into your designs. I think I
Yeah.
heard that right. That's not maybe traditionally what Europeans consider chic.
No, yeah. Europeans consider chic like less is more, muted colors. But now a lot of Black designers, they are incorporating that sort of maximalism into their design. One brand that I love that's doing it right now, where I work with Christopher John Rogers, like he is definitely takes maximalism to the max, in the sense of that he uses his prints and silhouettes to tell a story that is fun. It doesn't always have to be serious. I feel like minimalism is so serious. And sometimes when you wear clothes, you just want to feel great. You just want to feel like you're making a statement, but like also just feel not so serious. Because if you're always serious through life, it's just depressing. So that's why I try to incorporate maximalism in my clothes in terms of like the color and the fun silhouettes and the prints, and then maximalism as in telling the story in a way that is relatable to others, but also explains the true aspects of the culture. And that's what I aim to incorporate in all my collections and in my brands in the future. I find that a lot of non-European cultures are maximalist. I mean, if you look at the different countries in Africa, you see a mix and mash of prints and colors, and you know it's gorgeous, and it's something that is the fundamentals of, I feel like, maximalist culture. And that's why, when it comes to maximalism, it's not really incorporated in European, because it's like the opposite of African culture in a sense. Yeah. So that's why I love to incorporate that into my designs. Yeah. I hope.
That's cool. I guess, I know you're busy. I want to just see if you want to give the people your socials. Where can they follow you? And what are you going to do next? What's next on the docket? Where can they find you?
Yes. So my socials is I'm on Instagram, Osadayi_Ohan, and LinkedIn, my full name, Irueosa Osadayi Ohanmu. And soon we'll be making a website. I don't have it yet. And next I have an event. I just got the opportunity to design for Ruth Carter, who is the designer for Black Panther. So it's like a great honor to design for her, and I'm super excited about her wearing my dress on the red carpet. So it's gonna be fun wearing it to the NAACP event. So it's gonna be fun to experience that and network with all the people there, and see see people who I've admired for a long time in firsthand. It's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, that's really
Um,
cool. I would have started with that. Awesome. Oh my God.
sometimes you have to act like you're not so excited, but also like you're crying and screaming on the inside, like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like Angela Bassett's gonna be there, you know?
Yeah, wow, that's cool. That's incredible. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This has been really great.
Yeah, no worries.
It wasn't in this conversation, but it was with another one I recorded that it's going to come out later on. I don't know, sometime this season. But someone categorized me as a journalist. And I don't think that's what I'm doing here. To be fair, I want to be upfront about that. It's never what I've aimed to do with this show. But it's been hard to categorize what I'm trying to do with this show, right? I think maybe not externally, but internally. Like, what is it that I'm doing? But part of that is just failing to see what this show is, right? Which is just profiling very cool people doing very cool things in different industries, whether they're journalists, whether they're in the diplomacy field, whether they're fashion designers. And I think what I really loved about this conversation with Irueosa is just learning something new that I had no idea about, right? Like, I don't know a lot about the fashion industry. I think this episode ties really well together with the last episode I did with Jackie on Ibiza. Like, I love to wear cool clothes. I love to, feel good about what I wear, but to think about it outside of just like, what am I doing? And think about it in this grander scheme of both commerce and art and economy. Like, it's so interesting and cool. And I think that's not to discount, some of just like the selfishness in this mission, which is, trying to figure out who I am by learning about other people. I know who I am for the most part. But I think it's still a really fun thing we're doing here. And I'm really grateful for everyone who's listening. Thank you so much. Just a few notes before we wrap up. All the descriptions to her socials will be in the podcast notes below. Please check her out. She's the best. Follow and stay tuned. I know she's working a lot of cool things coming up. On this show, we'll be doing cool things coming up. I don't want to say on what exactly yet, but a lot of episodes are coming out soon. And I'm going to try this Wednesday release going forward. Because Monday, if I think about my audience, right, I don't think Monday's a good day for the demographic of this show. People don't want to, they don't want to get started with the week. Wednesday feels like a better day. It feels like the day everyone's like, okay, we're already in it. It might be less or more chill depending on what you need. And then you can kind of just sit back and relax and learn and grow along with me here on Minority Report with Salomón Flamenco. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. This has been Minority Report with me, your host, Salomón Flamenco. You can follow us on Instagram at minority_report_pod. If you want to be a part of the conversation, you can email us at minorityreport.beat@gmail.com. If you have been, I want to thank you for listening. That's all we have for you this week, but we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.